in it. It's good having everybody here today. It's good having our visitors with us today. Hopefully you'll find our worship services pleasing and acceptable, and you will make an opportunity to come back and worship with us. We are going through a year-long series based on a monthly study that I found online. And for May, we are talking about discerning the enemy. We are looking at some of the scriptures that are on here. This is a daily scripture reading. It's not reading the Bible in a year. This is just picking out scriptures for a daily reading. If you want one of these sheets, they are on that back small table for you to use. Again, we use some of the scriptures that are on there. Some of them I don't cover during the month. A lot of scriptures I bring in, like last week, were scriptures that were not even on that, talking about who the devil is and what he has done in our history. And so we are continuing that study of discerning who the enemy is. And remember, discerning means having or showing good judgment. It means to recognize or identify as separate and distinct. It can refer to detecting something with your eyes, with your five senses, or with your mind. Discerning means to understand the difference between two things like right from wrong, good from evil. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about discerning the enemy. In the enemy, we can't forget, that's kind of like a generalized, easy term, but we're talking about the devil. We're talking about Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, all those names that apply to the devil. And that's who we're talking about. He is, Christian enemy number one. And we need to remember that, and we need to continue to remember that in our daily lives and how he is getting at us. Last week we looked at how he has played a part in our history, our Christian history. We looked at Adam and Eve and how his first appearance, how he was a deceptive lying serpent. Cain and Abel. We looked at how, just a few chapters later in chapter 6 of Genesis, how he had corrupted the whole world to the point that God was upset that he had made man and destroyed the world. Okay? And we looked at other things throughout history. We didn't look at Sodom and Gomorrah, but again, that was because of the devil, that they could not find 5 souls, and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of their sexual immorality, and brought down hell, fire, and brimstone on those cities because of it. But Satan did not give up. And today we're going to look at what we need to look at and how Satan acts and how he gets at us. And then next week we're going to look at how to defend against the devil. And we're going to look at the scriptures off this sheet that deal with that. But again, what we're looking at here is how we need to be over on the right-hand side with God to be counted with the sheep when the day of judgment comes. But no, that's not what the devil wants. He wants us over here. He wants us on the left side. He wants us on his side and go to hell with him. And his sole purpose is to get our soul. That's what he wants. Because when he has your soul, he has you. And that's what he does. And so this morning I want us to look at scriptures that deal with that. We need to understand one simple aspect of the devil. He is constantly working in our lives to win our souls. I mentioned to you last week how on our way here to church that somebody there at Rockford pulled out in front of me that I almost T-boned him. And I looked at Kathy and I said, the devil doesn't want me to preach this today. He doesn't want me to preach against him. And some people might say, no, that wasn't the devil. That was just happened to be somebody pulling out in front of you. It happened 3 more times last week where I had people pulling out in front of me. Okay? We need to look at it, and we need to call the devil out when he's acting in our lives, and not just kind of, second guess it and say, oh no, that's not the devil in my life, Why would he do that? Because that's what he does. That's what he wants. Okay? I had something that I wanted to bring up to our Wednesday night class the last 2 weeks about this subject. 2 weeks ago, I was sick and I couldn't make it. This week, Kathy was sick, and it was possible COVID because she tested at home and it was COVID, so I stayed home. Okay? The devil didn't want me to be here on Wednesday night to talk about the subject that I wanted to against him. We need to realize how the devil works and how he is constantly working in our lives, trying to get us to sin, and how he's trying to prevent us from doing good. We need to understand that, brothers and sisters, and that's what today's lesson is about. Today we're going to start in 1 Thessalonians. We're going to look at a lot of scriptures of Paul writing to the first century churches. Here in 1 Thessalonians 2, verses 17 and 18. But we, brethren, having been taken away from you for a short time in presence, but not in heart, endeavored more eagerly to see your face with great desire. Therefore we wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again. But we were hindered by Satan. Satan hindered us. Paul realizes what we need to realize. Paul realized how Satan was interfering in their lives and preventing them from getting back to the church there in Thessalonica and to be with them. We don't know what it was that Satan was doing, but he was preventing them. This happens, this occurrence, whatever. They were held up in this city. But he realizes it was the devil preventing them. We can't make excuses for the devil, brothers and sisters. We need to realize it. And say, you know what? That's the devil acting in my life, trying to prevent me from doing what it is that I need to do for the Lord. So don't think that he doesn't do it, because Paul here says that he does. He acts in your life to prevent you from doing the good. Jesus in Matthew 7, verses 15 through 20. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. We talked about this last week. Remember, I had the slide up there of all the nice, beautiful white sheep. And there was a white wolf in there, and you picked him out. Okay? So we know this. Verse 16. You will know them, the false prophets, by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes? We gather blackberries, but not grapes, or figs from thistles. Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And we see this idea several times in the New Testament, to where when a good tree is not producing fruit, they cut it down and they throw it into the fire. This is depicting judgment, to where the people who are not bearing good fruit, or no fruit at all, are going to be cast into the fires of hell. Verse 20, therefore by their fruits, referring to the false prophets, you will know them. Okay? You are going to know the false teachers, the false preachers, the false ministers, and the false prophets by their fruit. Not how many people they can get to follow them, but what it is they are teaching. Again, Paul, his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, verses 13 through 15. For such are false prophets. Just talked about false teachers. Here we are with false apostles. Deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And we saw this last week with Judas and how the devil had entered him. And because of that, he betrayed Jesus. Verse 14, and no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. The devil is not holding back any punches. He can transform himself into false preachers, false teachers, false ministers, false apostles, and also angels of light. He's going to do everything he can to get at you. Verse 15, therefore it is no great thing if his ministers, his devils, his workers of evil, also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. Okay? The Bible just doesn't tell us to look out for them, but he tells us how to look out for them, what to look for. And that is what we need to be looking for, brothers and sisters, in our daily lives, is how the devil is trying to get at us. 1 John 4, verses 1 through 3. John tells us, beloved, do not believe in every spirit. So here we can add this to the list. Okay? Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God, and every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is now already in the world. Okay? And again, we saw that last week in Job. Remember? God, the Father, was there with angels, and who shows up to crash the party but the devil? God asked him, where have you been? I have been walking to and fro, back and forth on the earth. And if we bring in the scripture from 2 Peter, he's a ravenous wolf, a ravenous lion seeking whom he may devour. That's what he's doing when he's roaming the earth. He's looking whom he may devour. And you know who that is? That's us, brothers and sisters. That's us. He's looking how he can devour our souls. And we've got to be out looking for it. Well, how do we know it? We go to the scriptures. We read the scriptures. The scriptures, as we are looking, tells us what to look for. You know, there's several different ways of preaching. And I like this type where I'm bringing you scriptures. I know we have busy lives. And again, that's part of the devil, try to keep us away from the scripture. But that's the reason that I bring you all these scriptures to help us as a family of God to know the truth. And we know the truth by reading the truth. And it helps us to discern evil because it's not the truth. You know? And that's how we do that. Because it's important to us as Christians to make sure that we are following God to heaven and that we're not turning and following the devil. Again, in 2 Corinthians 2, verses 10 and 11. Now, whom you forgive anything, and we looked at this last month when we talked about forgiveness, I also forgive. For if indeed I have forgiven anything, I have forgiven that one for your sakes in the presence of Christ, lest Satan should take advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. We need to forgive so that the Satan doesn't take advantage of us. He's always looking for that nick in our armor. He's always looking for a way that we can stumble. He knows us. He knows what's going to make you stumble. He knows what's going to make you sin, and he's going to take advantage of that to make us fall. But brothers and sisters, we're learning about him. We can't be stupid about his devices. We can't be ignorant of what he's going to use to get at us. You know, when army generals are going against another army, they send out spies to try to find out their weaknesses so that's where they can attack, is on the weak side. That's what the devil does. He knows your weaknesses, and he's going to come at you through those weaknesses, whatever that is, because he knows he can get you by doing that. In John chapter 8, verses 44 through 45, please read this whole chapter to get the full story of what it is that Jesus is talking about here. He's talking to the Jews, okay, who have accused him. And he understands that the Jews are the descendants of Abraham. We pick up the story here in verse 44. You are your father, the devil. And the devil desires of your father you want to do. You are your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He, being the devil, was a murderer from the beginning. Again, we looked at that last week. We go all the way back to the beginning of time with Adam and Eve. Okay? With Cain and Abel. With the world. He's death and murder. And that's what he is. And does not understand the truth. Devil does not understand the truth because there is no truth in him. He takes the truth like he did with Eve and twists it for what he wants. There is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Again, that's Jesus speaking. The devil, Satan, Beelzebub, is the father of lies. And he uses those lies against you to get you to do what he wants. He does that to get you to sin. Oh, that's all right. You can do this or that. It's okay. You know, it's not going to hurt. You're not going to hurt anybody. You know? He can make it sound so wonderful. He can make it sound so good. He can convince you of anything to get you to sin. And again, we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow him to win. We've got to know the truth and we've got to follow it. We can't follow him down the wrong path. Going back to John chapter 10. Flip over a couple of pages from where we were last time. Or if you're in your phone, just do a couple of swipes to the left. Jesus here is speaking, and he says, I am the door. If anyone wants to enter by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief, which is Satan, does not come except to what? The only reason the devil comes, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. That is the devil. That is what Satan does. He comes in to steal your soul, to kill you, and to destroy you. And he's good at it. Brothers and sisters, you know, the scriptures talk about, if you know a thief's going to break into your house tonight, are you going to leave? No, you're going to stay there and you're going to guard your castle, aren't you? You're going to prevent him from getting in and stealing your stuff. The devil is trying to break into your soul every single day. And we need to be on guard, we need to be on watch, and do everything we can to stop him. Continuing on, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Again, God, Jesus, is life. The devil is death. And too many times people get those confused, and when they have a death in their family, they blame God. No, put the blame where the blame belongs. The devil is about death, not God. And then our last verse for this morning is found in Matthew 13. Again, read the whole chapter. I'm not covering this whole parable. We've talked about the parable of the sower when we studied parables. Okay? Verses 1 through 9 is the parable of the sower. Verses 10 through 17, the disciples asked, Jesus, why do you speak in parables? And Jesus explains why he does. And in verses 18 to 23, he goes back through the parable of the sower and explains each part of it for them to help them to understand why he talks in parables. Well, all we're going to look at is verse 22 this morning. Remember the four soils. One is hard and talks about the seed, which is the gospel, and using people as the soil. The hard soil, people just, hard heart, they don't want to accept it. Then he talked about the rocky soil, to where the seed takes root and grows, but it's too rocky, there's no soil, and ends up dying. And then the third soil is the one that we see here, is a thorny ground. And the fourth one, of course, is good soil, and that's the one that we always put ourselves in because we're a Christian. We've accepted Christ. We want to be the good soil. But remember, there's a requirement to be the good soil, and that is that we have to be fruitful. Again, going back to the trees that are fruitful or not fruitful. So we want to be fruitful trees. But unfortunately, I think too many times we fall short of that good soil, and we land here in verse 22. Now, he who receives the seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of the riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. We hear the word, we accept the word, we're baptized into Christ, but then the devil steps in, and the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of its riches choke the word. And I've seen a lot of people that fall into this thorny ground, and you probably know some as well, who become a Christian and they're doing great, but then the world, okay, let's call it what it is, the devil steps up. And he brings the world into your life. Oh, you got to take care of this. Oh, you got to do this. Oh, you've got to succeed at work. Oh, you've got to do this. And we get pulled away from doing what we're supposed to be doing for Christ. And he wins. Oh, we got to make more money. You got to spend more time at work. The riches of the world are more important than the riches in heaven. And he wins. He pulls us away. And that's the reason I think too many times we're good soil, but yet those thorns step in. The devil steps in. And he chokes the word out of us. Because that's what he does. That's what he does, brothers and sisters. And he's good at it. You plant a garden and you're weeding it. We have several gardeners in our services here, and then that one weed pops up, and you miss it. Then another weed pops up, and another weed. And before long, if you don't get out there and you don't get every single weed, they're just going to pop up everywhere. Then you end up with a nice garden of weeds with beautiful yellow flowers and the poofy poppings on the top that spread more. That's how the devil works in our life. It's one thing, and then another, and then another. And before long, the word, the gospel in us is choked out by the world, and the devil wins again. Brothers and sisters, we've got to remember this. We have got to stay on top of it. We have got to realize when the devil is working in our lives. And we've got to stop him. And we'll talk about that next week on how to stop him. And it's very simple. I had a lady when I was preaching over in Kashmir, and her family and everybody was always constantly on her. She was just a wreck at church because she was just, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know which way to turn. And I told her, I said, it's very simple. Just say no. Just say no. Very simple 2-letter word. Just say no. When you feel the devil working in your life, just say no. Every time I see her, she was at Ladies' Day, she walks right up to me. I remember my word. I remember my word. It's no. I always ask her, what is it? It's no. You know, I said, have you used it? Oh yeah, I've used it. You know, and she's excited about it because every Sunday I asked her, what's the word? What's the word? You know? And the same thing with you, brothers and sisters. Don't forget that word. Very simple. No. Not today, devil. Not today. It's not happening today. No. And next week, like I said, we'll get into more things of what we can do to resist the devil. But what we need to do this morning is, if you need help, we're here. We can pray for you. We can encourage you. We can strengthen you in your fight against the devil. That's what it is. It's a fight. A fight that we have to win. Because if we lose and we turn and we go the wrong way, we don't want that. If you haven't put on Christ yet, and that's something that you need to do, we can take care of that sin problem this morning and get you on the right side, going in the right direction, going to heaven.